Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing a breakdown of the trailer that was released a few days ago for the reboot of Charlie's Angels. Now, for those people that aren't familiar with the history of that particular franchise, it started out as, I believe it was this late 70s to early 80s television show that then spawned two movies that starred Cameron Diaz, Lucy Liu, and Drew Barrymore. So, the last film in that series, the second one, which I think was Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, came out in 2003. So this is now a fully rebooted version of that. It's not some kind of a sequel continuation or something along those lines. Uh, and it stars Kristen Ritter. I mean, sorry, not Kristen Ritter. Kristen Stewart, Naomi Scott, and Ella Balinska. I believe that is how you pronounce that. If I'm butchering that name, I apologize. But the thing with this movie is it's a reboot, but it's a reboot that is relatively close to the film that is being rebooted. This isn't this issue. This isn't the same situation as Amazing Spider-Man versus right at 5 years after Spider-Man 3, but it's fairly close. And a lot of I don't think anybody was really clamoring for a reboot of the Charlie's Angels film franchise because, to be honest, the films themselves, even though they were relatively profitable, they weren't that good. They were very campy in a lot of ways, and it worked in kind of that when you're playing off like a late '70s television show, but it still felt very campy. But appears to be more of I wouldn't say a campy tone. They feel like they're doing more of like a James Bond type of thing, and they're turning that into this. Now, this entire thing appears to be the brainchild of Elizabeth Banks. She directed the film. She's the executive producer on the film, and she also wrote the screenplay. She's also in the movie as the character of Bosley, which apparently is played by three different people. In addition to Elizabeth Banks, it's also Patrick Stewart who shows up in the trailer, and Jimon Hunso, which again, I apologize if I'm butchering the hell out of that name. Um, but to get into the actual trailer, we start off with what appears to be Kristen Stewart in this area with this Asian businessman, or presumably a businessman or a mafioso or something like that. And the first line they start this off with is women can do I think women can do anything. And then of course the man comes in and says, but should they? And it's really cringy, but I get the idea, just because this goes back to the idea of demographics, and I've covered this in other videos before. Is I'm going to use a line. Don't bash me for using this line because I know this line was used by Brie Larson, but there's a difference between how I'm using it and how she used it. This movie is not made for people like me. It is not made for generally people that don't enjoy this. I'm not going to enjoy. I'm not going to go see Charlie's Angels. I'm not going to enjoy the film. It's something that I could probably sit down and watch if I was stoned, but I'm not really going to. This film was not made for me. This film is made for, and it's very blatant. It is made for younger female. It was made for younger millennial female viewers. That is what this film is made for by everything that we can see in the film. And the difference between Brie Larson using that line and how I'm using it here is Brie Larson was using that to describe somebody who gave an unfavorable review to A Wrinkle in Time, whereas a critic is supposed to provide an objective review regardless of their personal feelings on the film. Uh, I'm using this in more of a term of like, I'm not the target demographic for this film. I am not the person that they are marketing this film to. They are marketing this to younger women. Um, Younger women and teenage girls, and girls, mainly a female demographic. So that's why this trailer has that stuff in it, because that's who they're marketing to. And a lot of people have misconstrued this as kind of like a cringe factor. It is cringy for some people, for a lot of people, but because they're marketing to that demographic, I can understand why it's in there. I think you could have done it a little bit less on the nose, but uh, moving on from that, we get introduced to Ella Balinska and her character of Jane, and Kristen Stewart plays Sabina, and then Naomi Scott, who's the third angel, quote unquote, plays Elena. So, or Elena. So, the other thing that they do in this is they kind of give away the trailer kind of does this thing where it gives away essentially most of the premise of the film is that Naomi Scott's character is basically working on this device that could be weaponized. They don't really explain what it is, and essentially that's going to be the plot MacGuffin. You can tell that's going to be the plot MacGuffin, that they're going to chase after this thing. It gets stolen, and they have to chase after it and find it before somebody can use it and destroy some stuff. Um, so that's kind of the general gist of the whole thing. They go through, they have their action scenes and stuff like that. They have what you would see as the girl moments. They go into like this big closet full of like disguises and clothes, and then they have this thing where they basically have the discount Q character come out and explain all the gadgets and stuff. It feels a very much like a Mission Impossible type of. It's very much a Mission Impossible, a 007. It's aping off of those types of films, but again, it's marketed to a female audience, and it's based off of a property that is mainly marketed to women. So, moving through that, you have various scenes. There's a few really cringy ones where they show Kristen Stewart in like a pink jockey outfit. I guess she's at a horse track or something. Um, there's a lot of just kind of weird imagery in this that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Apparently, they explain that Ella Balinska's character is actually former MI6 and like a bunch of other stuff. They kind of give these little like character moments and stuff like that in there to kind of give you a little bit of a hint at what the characters are like, or just kind of their gist. 'Cause so Kristen Stewart's the face character. She's the one that's always in the disguises and stuff. Naomi Scott's the tech whiz. Ella Balinska's the martial arts and the fighting expert. So okay, we have all our niches filled essentially. That's what it's trying to get across. And then at the end of it, they do the Charlie's Angels pose where they have the logo comes in, and then you see everything. Now you do see Patrick Stewart in this. You do see Elizabeth Banks in this. And apparently, them plus a third person are playing Bosley. So Bosley is going to be set up kind of like what they had to do with the first two films, where it's more of just a title that passes from person to person as opposed to an actual person named Bosley. Um, so again, there's some departures there from past versions, but it's not anything that's really going to affect the film probably. And this film is, I believe it's set to debut in November. Yeah, November 15th. Is when this film is set to debut, which is probably a smart choice considering the fact that it is going to, I would assume it's going to be released on a weekend where there's not a whole lot of competition, especially for their chosen demographic. So, looking at the trailer is not terrible. Like I said, there are some cringy scenes in it. But the other thing that they do advertise is they advertise the music, which again kind of gives away the demographic. They're advertising original songs by Ariana Grande and Miley Cyrus. So obviously, this is not something that's billed necessarily for, if you went to go see Endgame, for instance, or actually that's probably a bad example because that was one of the highest grossing films of all time. But let's say you went to go see the Child's Play remake. They're not marketing this to people that went to go see Child's Play. They're marketing this to people that like female-led action films. But the difference is that this is a female property, and I've explained this before. Is that when they try to force a new demographic onto a franchise that has an established demographic already, then that doesn't work because you're alienating the core demographic. In this case, you have a demographic that already exists that you are already going to pander, well, not, I shouldn't say pander, but you're going to direct your film towards, that is the demographic that surrounds the film already. So you're not introducing a new demographic, you're simply drudging up the old one and maybe expanding the age range a little bit down to the lower end. So overall, I thought that it did what it was supposed to do correctly. Again, the dialogue's a bit cringy, but I'm not expecting Shakespeare. And the other thing is, it's not coming out at a time when I feel like it's going to be up against stiff competition. This is not a midsummer film. So I'd like to know what you think about the Charlie's Angels reboot. Are you interested in this? Does this seem like complete dreck to you? Does anybody give a shit about this movie? Are you a fan of the television series or the earlier films? Put your thoughts in the comments. I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?